Did you hear that 91% of guys that use Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant recommend it? Dove Men Plus Care user Bobby said he doesn't know how it works, but it gets the job done. That's good enough for me, Bobby. Pick up some new Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant for yourself at your local retailer.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We are back and better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And put the word in the street, people. It's a football Friday. Rookie quarterback setting the world on fire. We'll talk about it. Plus, Nick Saban responds to Josh Rosen. And don't expect to see Kyrie Irving traded anytime soon, at least not as soon as we thought. Those and more on a jam-packed Friday. Golic are ready to do this.
Oh, absolutely. Nice slate of games last night. 7 preseason games, and we had just come off the game Wednesday night of Carolina and Houston, a couple of rookies in Deshaun Watson and Christian McCaffrey, and talking about how well Watson played. And I guess Mitch Trubisky took that to heart and said, well, okay, if he played well, I'm going to try and one-up him a bit. And, boy, he sure did.
You know what's hilarious is that even the most educated of football fans will have this reaction. We all know these games don't really mean anything. They don't count, but they matter. You want to see good things. It's the first preseason game. Trubisky, in this case last night, is going up against reserves and playing with reserves. Yeah. And yet we will react overwhelmingly. If he had looked terrible last night,
we'd have crushed him.
We would have said, you see, they should have taken Deshaun Watson. And instead, we're basically saying the Bears have finally found the quarterback they've been looking for since Sid Luckman.
And while I'm not going to go that far, I absolutely understand your point, because there'll be many people who are going to say, well, let's ease up. You know, he was the third quarterback in, went in before half, a nice 2-minute drill, a nice second half. We'll get into all the numbers and how we played and such, but it was against guys who won't be in the league. Okay, that's fine. But all they could do is go up against the guys he went up against. And he was fantastic. He showed a lot of the things he showed in his very limited time in North Carolina with accuracy and completions in a row, which we'll get into. So that's all we can judge him on. And if we would have crushed him if he airmailed some balls, then we're going to talk well about him when he did well. The competition will get better. He'll play against that going through the preseason. We'll see. As you'll hear, John Fox said the depth chart's not changing, but all he can do is play the plays he's supposed to play and let the chips fall where they may. And he looked very, very good last night. Right,
and for those of us whose job it is to react, we have two options. One is the reasonable, calm-headed, it's just the first preseason game reaction. And the other is, oh, my God, this guy looks fantastic. And personally, I vote for the latter.
Off the top.
All right, let's go off the top. Dodgers win again. I feel like saying that we shouldn't even bother mentioning it anymore when they win. It's only news when they lose. The Dodgers are ridiculous.
They really are. They haven't lost a series since their June 5th to 7th series against the Nationals. All the other teams in the league have lost at least 6 series. They haven't lost a series since the beginning of June. And Yu Darvish, coming to the team, what has he done? Well, he became the 4th pitcher in modern baseball history, that's since 1900, to have at least 10 strikeouts in each of his first 2 starts with a team. So he gets traded over there. You wonder, because he was struggling, no doubt about that, leading up to this, and he has been money in his first 2 starts. Remember, they don't even have Clayton Kershaw back, and you really hope they're going to need Kershaw, you would think, to win the World Series, even though Kershaw hasn't been great in the postseason. But imagine him coming back healthy with what they have right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the Darvish thing, you can't help but wonder if the weight of possibly being traded was on him. His last start before he got dealt, he just fell apart completely, and now he's been, as you mentioned, money
off the top,
in an LA uniform. All right, Jordan Spieth trying to win some money and make some history this weekend at Quail Hollow. It did not start extraordinarily well for him. Spieth won over after 1 round of the PGA.
Yeah, he's won over Rory McIlroy, who the favorite was in this tournament. It was Rory was the favorite, and then Spieth was next. Again, we know what Spieth's trying to do, become the 6th player for the career in hitting the career in all the majors. He could have been the youngest. He will be the youngest if he's able to do it. But he made back-to-back birdies on 7 and 8 to go 1 over where he would finish. He was never won an official event after posting an opening round score over par. It's Kevin, is it Keisner? I'm not going to lie. Don't even know. And Thorbjorn Olsen.
Olsen,
Olsen.
who I happen to have on
Olsen.
DraftKings.
Do you really?
Yes.
Do you really?
I needed someone to fit the money slot into which he fits.
Really?
So I actually have him as part of my group on DraftKings. Go Olsen.
Here you go. 27-year-old from Denmark, 5 international wins. This is his first lead following any round of any PGA Tour. He made 14 of 4, and here's where you win, gang. 14 of 14 putts inside of 10 feet.
He's going to win us some money this week. I told
wow,
Steve,
that's
buy him a car.
fantastic.
We sat around and picked out our lineup the other day.
Maybe I'll get his name right at some point.
The NBA has released its schedule for the opening night and the opening week and Christmas Day, and there are very few surprises. It's loaded with Golden State and Cleveland.
Yeah, as well it should be in this. It's going to be what the Warriors and Cavaliers are meeting on Christmas for the third straight year. By the way, Christmas with LeBron and the family, 11th year now he'll be playing on Christmas Day.
Sure.
11, and certainly that's what you do. You know,
when you're the biggest star in the sport, you play on Christmas.
That's what happens. They should just send him. Sorry, LeBron. Every year, you know, send wherever you're going to be. You know, wherever
his family celebrates Christmas on a different day.
That's exactly right, and it's okay.
They're used to it. The kids have to be used to it
exactly
by now. They've
right.
never been. Every once in a while, I guess they're at home.
Right, exactly.
But this year they go to Golden State because the Warriors got the win, and to the winner
Off the top.
goes the spoils. Speaking of basketball, and we'll have Woj in here a little bit later this morning. The Knicks and the Rockets are talking again about Carmelo.
Talking again, and really this is the only team Carmelo is going to waive the no-trade clause for, so that kind of puts the Knicks in a little bit of a box. We'll talk to Wojo about this. They need a third team involved to make all the money work. Not going to bore anybody with all the facts about that. Bottom line is that's where Carmelo wants to go. That makes it a narrow channel for the Knicks to try and get something done.
Yeah, I mean, you're threading a needle there with him. And unlike the Kyrie Irving thing where the Cavaliers have I think, a very reasonable option of just keeping him, the Knicks don't, which is to say they could keep Carmelo, but it really doesn't make any sense for them. I've never really thought it made any sense for him. They could try and call his bluff and say, look, we don't have a deal here. You can play another year on this young rebuilding team, or give us another team or two you might be willing to talk
Open
about.
it up a bit,
and I have no idea what his reaction would be to that.
No clue.
So we'll find out. And then finally, of course, all the preseason action headlined by Mitchell Trubisky. Let's make that off the top, presented by Progressive Insurance, where they'll compare rates for you so you get the best deal even if it's not with Progressive, saving you time and money. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today. You used the expression the perfect storm earlier this week in relation to something else. And I don't know why. I mean, it's obviously not that I've never heard it before, but it is stuck in my head this week. And we've had a lot of those this week. And the one in Chicago last night was the ideal one. So you've got Mike Glennon, who is the highly paid for 1 year free agent quarterback that the Bears bring in, and the fans are completely unenthusiastic about it. He winds up going up against one of the best defenses in football in Denver. He throws a pick six on the third play of the game.
Yep, that's an ugly pass.
And then once all of the reserves come into the game, Mitchell Trubisky, who the Bears mortgaged the future and traded up to get, winds up coming in and setting the world on fire.
Trubisky didn't go in second. Trubisky went in third. Mark Sanchez went in second there, so Trubisky came in third into this game.
So it's the perfect storm of circumstances for us to wake up this morning and say, well, obviously, the clock is now ticking on the Mitchell Trubisky era in Chicago.
But, you know, what you look at, again, if you want to look at the numbers, you know, that's just fine. The numbers were great, 18 to 25, 60-some yards, and a touchdown, a short touchdown pass as he was rolling left to Victor Cruz, which we'll break down a little bit. But it coincides with a bad outing by Glennon, who, by the way, who was the quarterback in Tampa Bay before the number one pick in the draft? Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
It was Glennon. Glennon goes to Chicago, thinks he has new life, and then all of a sudden there's a number two pick in the draft being a quarterback. So talk about deja vu for him. So that's really the key here. It would have been one thing if Trubisky looked like he did, but Glennon, who didn't play much, threw 8 passes if he was 6 of 8. You know, for 50 yards or whatever, and looked fine.
But he
was 2 of 8. He had a 0. He had a Blutarski, you know, a grade point average for his quarterback rating. 2 of 8 with the pick 6 on the third play, as we talked about.
And it's a terrible throw.
It was
also,
a bad
he throws
throw.
it into triple coverage.
It was a bad throw. I had no idea where he was throwing it. I don't know if it was miscommunication again with the receiver or not. Then Trubisky comes in, especially at the end of the half. You got 1:55 to go in the half, and he leads him on a 50-yard drive. He leads them on a touchdown drive. At one point in his time out there, completes 10 in a row. Now, he's done that in college. I think he had 18 in a row in a game in college. He had a high percentage completion in college, certainly had a high percentage completion rate here as well. But, again, forgetting the numbers, he looked good. He looked poised. Just what I said about Deshaun Watson. And from the accuracy standpoint, we're talking about Watson having some off throws, but still looked good in what he was doing. Trubisky was throwing darts. I mean, he's a big kid, strong arm, can get the ball all over the place, and he was humming some darts out there and doing well. I ran a couple of times for some nice chunks as well. Can be a dangerous runner to move the change. But he's another one of those guys who you think of you always say a big, strong guy, pocket guy, but he can move. He's a really good athlete. He'll run just enough to hurt you, but he'll put the ball in the spot, and he's not afraid to throw it in there and in traffic, in coverage, and try and put on the money, and that's exactly what he did.
Look, he showed you, much as Foster did the night before. There's no guarantee. What did I say?
Foster?
Oh, Deshaun Watson, yeah.
Deshaun Watson,
much as Deshaun Watson did the night before. This doesn't mean they're going to be great players, and it certainly doesn't mean they're not going to have nights where they look like rookies.
Exactly.
Because they're going to.
Yeah.
But they showed you glimpses of why there was reason to be excited. Trubisky put on display for you last night all the things about him that scouts liked. The reason that he was going to be the number one quarterback taken in this draft, even though he's played as little as he has, because of the size and the arm strength and all that kind of thing, and the somewhat unexpected athleticism. And Watson had done it the night before. He looked just terrific the night before. I thought he looked terrific the night before, even if you did a nice breakdown of him yesterday, and he missed a couple of throws.
Yeah, he did.
But that's going to happen.
Sure it is.
He put on display for you all the reasons to be excited about him, and Trubisky did exactly the same last night.
And the thing about Trubisky is look at the situations he was in. A 2-minute drive. Obviously just starting out his NFL career, a 2-minute drive of which he takes him 50 yards and throws the touchdown to Victor Cruz. Third quarter, a 75-yard drive, of which he's 5 for 5 for 50 yards. So it's not like just these hoisting big plays that he had. He played well. He had good sustained drives and all over the place, whether it was in the pocket, whether it was rolling right. And I think the coaches all do a nice job when they get these guys rolling a little bit as well to take half the field away and give them a little comfort out on the edge. But he rolled right, he rolled left, he stood in the pocket, he took some hits, he made the throws. He was a very, very accurate thrower. That impressed me the most, that you're throwing to the right guy, and then how are you getting it there? And you're putting it on the money. You're giving your receiver a chance. You're leading him well. You're throwing him open at times. He really, really looked good. I was very, very impressed. And I tell you, for all the trepidation of that management there, Ryan Pace had to be, at least right now, going, okay, the GM for the Bears saying, okay, that was a good start because they're taking a lot of guff. And listen, I was one of them. Not that I didn't think Mitchell at some point could be a good quarterback. I had said I would have taken Watson first, and I would not have taken Trubisky second. So Ryan Pace was catching in the team a lot of flack for that of, what's this guy going to turn into and all that. But you can breathe at least a sigh of relief now. It's early, but as we said before, if he airmailed a bunch of balls, we'd be crushing him today. He didn't. He played well. I don't care who it was against. All he can do is go in there and play against who he was going against. And he did extremely well. And it's more than the numbers. The numbers were fantastic if you want to look at them, but watching him, watching his feet, watching him roll left, watching him square up his shoulders while he's rolling left, which could be the most important thing when you're throwing the ball rolling left, rolling right, putting the ball on the money. It was really, and he, you know what he had, Greeny? He had command. He had command of that offense. The moment wasn't too big for him, and you never know what you're going to get. I thought with Deshaun Watson, you could expect more of a guy, even though it was his first NFL experience, a guy who would be able to handle the moment because he's played in monster games in college and a lot of them. With Trubisky, he hasn't. That's been the knock on him is, yes, he's got the arm. Yeah, he had the completion percentage. Yes, he had a string of completions records as well, but he only had 13 starts. What's he going to do when the NFL lights go on? And you know what? Game one, I'd say he checked the nice box.
I would say this. I'm going to be right. I just went back and found it. My tweet, April 27th. If the Bears believe in Trubisky, this was a great move. Glennon is a bridge. People will crush this move, but I like it. For one day, Greeny has redemption. All right, let's take a listen to what let's skip right to the Louis Riddick. Okay, so here, let me tell you quickly the other sound bites I was going to play for you. John Fox basically said, "We're not changing the depth chart. Don't overreact."
Nor should
What's
they.
he going to say?
Nor should. Well, nor should they. Shouldn't. You don't look at this game and say, "Oh, well, that's it." Because as he mentioned, now it's stuff to help the cause. He said, "Hey, Glennon's playing against the starters. That's a really good defense in Denver, and no doubt Glennon struggled. But no way now. What does it do in practice? Will it give you start to get Trubisky more reps over Sanchez? I don't know how the split had been, so we'll see where that goes. But in no way, shape, or form, I completely agree. Are you changing the quarterback depth chart from the third stringer going to first stringer after one preseason game?
And then Trubisky himself said all the things you'd want him to say, which is he completely downplayed everything. And then Louis Riddick went on ESPN last night, and he said this.
Look great. Look, you want to see a guy operate at a very high level, Scott, at the things that you thought he could do well when you drafted him. People thought that Mr. Trubisky could roll out, change the launch point as far as where he throws the ball from, and he could get it out of his hand fast, and he could get it there accurately. And when you see a guy being able to sprint left, get his shoulders turned to the line of scrimmage, and then put it on the money, that's what you want. That's what he did at North Carolina. That's what he's doing here in Chicago. He doesn't have to have his feet set. Again, a quick flick of the wrist here, a three-step drop, a quick slant, putting it where the receiver can catch it and then protect himself. Those are the kind of things that you want to see. I know you just mentioned it. It's the first preseason game. Easy coverages, second and third teamers. But look, if the guy went out there and was airmail and stuff and throwing interceptions, then you'd be like, he stinks. We don't want to give him credit, but we would be ready to crush him. The guy's going to be starting. He's just going to be.
So, again, that was the plan. But remember, we heard that it was with Blake Bortles, correct? We heard that plan in Jacksonville that he's going to redshirt when they pick him in the first round. They're not going to play him, and they played him. And they said the same thing about Trubisky with bringing Glennon in. Glennon, again, is making $14-15 million. Trubisky had 13 starts in college, so the thought was just sit him, let him learn. But the player is the one that can take care of that. Really, in this situation, it could be both. Because if Glennon was playing great, you wouldn't really be thinking about it right now. There has to be two sides of that. But with as well as Trubisky, it seems, played in this game. Again, we're not in practice to see what the coaches and everybody sees in practice. You start to move up the ranks a little bit, and then it starts to go down to, okay, how's the team doing? When do we start the clock ticking on this guy taking over the huddle? There's a lot of things that'll go into it.
Well, to the exact point you made, Louis Riddick, while this game was going on, tweeted, "Every plan is a good plan until it isn't." Yeah. Trubisky is not sitting all year. No way. Yeah. I think, look, maybe the best case scenario is Glennon plays well. Let's not discount that possibility, despite the fact that he went 2 for 8 last night. He threw a pick six on his third play, and on his third series, a snap went over his head.
And that wasn't his fault, obviously. Right. We keep showing that when we talk about Glennon not playing well, and the snap was nowhere near him. That was not his fault, yet we want to lump that in there with all the bad plays.
But the bottom line is he gets 3 drives, and that's one of them. So that's why he winds up 2 for 8 with a 0 quarterback rating. But the reality of the situation is if the Bears are not going to be – there's a lot of things working in the direction of playing Trubisky this year. Mm-hmm. And one of them is job security. Like yesterday, ESPN.com listed – and look, John Fox has been around the block and back 10 times. So I'm not in any way suggesting he's doing something for his own job security. But the reality of it is if this is a team that's not expected to compete for anything this year. If midway through the season – Mike Glennon isn't setting the world on fire. Probably the best thing you can do if he's not Christian Hackenberg and you're not afraid of putting him near the field.
And, where you
put the kid on the field, let him play, and if he's showing signs of developing, then that also doesn't do bad things for a coach's job security who's on the hot seat also.
Completely agree. A lot is going to be, obviously, as I said, there's more than just one thing here, but the main thing is they have to feel comfortable putting the player on the field. You brought up Hackenberg. I brought up Jared Goff, where obviously coaches didn't feel comfortable about putting these guys on the field. And that has more to do with what they're seeing in practice and what they'd seen in preseason. But here already, again, it's just week 1. It certainly looks to be going in a positive direction, as we saw last night for Trubisky. So, listen, I agree with you. A lot will have to do with Glennon. A lot will have to do with how the team is playing. But Trubisky, at least for last night, and this is what we do after a performance like that, is we say, okay, the clock may start ticking a little early.
All right, we're Mike and Mike, and we are asked every week by our friends at Sport Clips to pick an MVP moment of the week. Sport Clips, you watch sports, we cut hair. It's perfect. Sport Clips, it's good to be a guy. Let's give it to Trubisky, because as you say, all NFL debuts don't come, the same.
Mm-hmm.
You get thrown in there in a 2-minute drill and say, here you go, kid, go out there and do this for the very first time at Soldier Field and see what happens, and he handles it the way he does. Again, it doesn't mean he's going to be a superstar. It doesn't mean that in week 2 of the preseason he won't look exactly like the, undeveloped rookie that he is. But for the moment, let's give him MVP Moment of the Week, brought to you by Sport Clips.
Yep, completely agree. Again, you watch his throws. They were accurate throws. He didn't most of the time, for the most part, he didn't put his receivers in any kind of bad situations at all. And as I said about Deshaun Watson, I'll say the same thing with Trubisky. Even though all the numbers look good, the best thing about it is there is now tape of him playing his first NFL game. I guarantee you he made mistakes, and that's what you concentrate on. We saw the good things, but it's the little things that the eye of the person who's not a coach doesn't see that they'll go over and that they'll fix. And he already knows them, and the coaches, they'll go over them together, and that's going to be the most important thing out of it.
The best of Mike and Mike.
All right, here we are on this Football Friday. Mike Golic Jr. here. Just 3 guys named Mike sitting around wearing XL shirts. Again, if you're just joining us, Junior and I switched shirts after we made the observation, actually Senior and I, earlier this week, made the observation with all the weight you've lost. And that's the first thing people say to me now. It used to always be, you're bigger than I thought you'd be. Because
how good looking I am?
To you. I mean, over the years, people will say, will always make some remark about you to me, and I'm sure vice versa.
You have a nice lower chin.
That's not nice.
Do you mean the second one or the third one?
Okay.
Which one of those do you
Seriously.
like?
The gizzard. He's developed my grandpa's gizzard now. You lost weight. It's like you deflated the sack below there, like the frog. Now it's like a flappy gizzard.
Why are you still here?
Hi.
I've lost track of what I was saying. Oh, the thing that everyone comments to me on now is how much weight you've lost.
Right.
That's all I ever hear is, oh, my God, I can't believe how much weight Golic has lost. And we made the observation earlier this week, you've gotten down to an XL, which is my size. We wear the same size shirt. Junior, who is anything but junior when it comes to size, and I wear the same size shirt. So we switched shirts during a break, and I think we both look fabulous.
It's unreal. We're wearing it well right now.
You're wearing it well. Greeny, that's a little baggy on you.
It's a touch baggy, but I mean, it's not like I'm wearing like a nightshirt.
It's close.
It's a reasonable looking size.
It really shows off your pipe cleaners.
I get the sun's out, guns out, my friend.
No.
Don't knock it.
Okay.
In his defense, I think if he had put that shirt on when I got it brand new, it would be all right.
Before you stretched it out,
blown it out a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm like a XL plus. I'm the Sexl. It's a little bit extra to it.
All right, Let's get to some football here because I really want to make sure we get to the Josh Rosen stuff because that's what I've been looking forward to all week is this this discussion about that. But quickly, obviously, top headline today, Mitchell Trubisky. Controversially, the Bears trade up a spot in the draft to take him number 2. And does one night mean it was the right move? Obviously not, but you could not get off to a better start than Trubisky.
No, you couldn't. He did everything you asked. And as many will say, I was against third stringers or whatever. But as we talked about earlier, if he threw the ball poorly, we would have ripped him this morning and say, oh, see, he's not ready. Put him on the bench. He threw well. And forgetting the throwing well, he looked good, rolling right, rolling left. He put the ball on the money. That, Mike, was one of the most impressive things to me is poise and just being able to hang in the pocket and have command to come in at the end of the half, minute 55 to go, lead to a touchdown with 13 seconds to go. Put together the string of completions that he did. He showed a lot of poise and a lot of command to the offense, but I was really impressed with his accuracy. He never really hung his receivers out to dry at all.
And you know what? The counter, and someone brought this up on Twitter this morning when I was doing first and last, was, you can say he's out there playing against third stringers. He's playing with them, too. The guys that are blocking for him and the guys that are catching for him are not guys that are at his level either or at that starting level. So it's not like he's getting a ton of help from those spots either. But for me, you mentioned situations. That's a huge part of it. And that's a huge part of preseason is trying to see guys in situations against different teams. You can replicate those in practice. They do 2-minute drills and all variations of time left, of timeouts left, of place on the field, and you can replicate that in practice, but there's still something to doing it in a place that's not scripted, doing it in a place where you're not controlling all the variables, and to see him be able to operate like that in one of the most important scenarios in those 2-minute end-of-half, end-of-game scenarios is a huge feather in his cap.
You know, we always look at quarterbacks. Another quarterback, DeShone Kizer for the Cleveland Browns. He's a guy that looked like he was rising up and then looked like a rookie in a scrimmage, and he played well last night, throws the deep ball incredibly well, but what goes along with it is the guys he's trying to beat out didn't do a whole lot. Now, again, Brock Osweiler is playing against the starters, and then it was Cody Kessler went in and then Kaiser. But he looked good. I mean, when they get their chance to show, they're showing. So these rookies, Deshaun Watson, will he have a chance to displace Tom Savage at some point? Now Trubisky threw himself into that conversation. I know it's only one game. Kaiser had already kind of been in that discussion. Where it won't happen is in Kansas City with Mahomes. Alex Smith is
Certainly
going to
not
be the starter there. So that's not going to change no matter how well Mahomes plays. But these other three situations took some interesting turns.
Well, if you look at the four, there weren't four quarterbacks in the first round, but Kaiser went so early in the second. Let's use the four of them. They're in vastly different situations, right? Mahomes goes to a Kansas City team that is a Super Bowl contender and has an established quarterback. In Houston, Watson goes to a team that is a Super Bowl contender without an established quarterback. But the fact that everyone's estimation of him was he was the most ready to go in and play, I think he has a chance to go in and play. I don't think it's inconceivable he wins that job week one, that he is the starting quarterback when the season begins in Houston.
I don't think that's inconceivable either. Would the Texans love Tom Savage to play extremely well, being that he has more years in the league than Watson and help lead this team? Absolutely, that's what they would want. But I agree with you. It would not stun me if Deshaun Watson won that job.
I know he doesn't make the decisions, but didn't DeAndre Hopkins come out the other day and essentially throw his hat behind Tom Savage?
Yes, he did.
And for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who's been one of the better receivers in the league, but has suffered through quarterback hell there in Houston, that to me is kind of telling of what Tom Savage has put together behind closed doors so far. I went into this thinking that Deshaun Watson probably had the best chance to be on the field week one. Now that to me looks like a scenario where it could be the opposite. With all these other situations where it's a lot, you're not getting those veteran returns out of the quote-unquote veterans that are on your team trying to stave off these rookies, whereas Tom Savage seems to have secured some of that. Because all these performances do, and you know this, Dad, they go and secure you more reps in the following weeks.
Right.
Maybe Kaiser and Mitch Trubisky get more one looks in game 2 of preseason so they can see them out there on tape against those defenses. Maybe it's just in practice the way those reps get divvied up, but they've earned that much out of this game.
Yeah, the situation in Chicago with Trubisky is they brought in a guy to be the quarterback this year. They're paying him starting quarterback money for this 1 year only, and you've made a huge investment in Trubisky. So you're going to do whatever you think best develops him. If you think it's put him in soon, you'll put him in soon. If you think it's wait till the end of the year or not at all this year, I think the smart thing to do is whatever you think is in the best interest of his development, that's job one this season over anything else.
The first thing you're going to see there of the next step, and Mike, you know this, is it'll be in practice where we don't see it. He'll take reps from Sanchez.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
That's what's going to happen is if they feel more comfortable with what they saw, he'll start to get more of those reps, and it'll be at Mark Sanchez's expense as he tries to move up the ladder.
That picture starts to get super clear as the weeks press on here, where you see those reps dwindle and you start to understand who's going to be on the team and who's not, and that's going to become very, very apparent there. But you talked about it with the quarterbacks. How much does, I heard you guys bring it up before, Ryan Pace and John Fox, they put out our list on .com last night of quarterbacks on the hot seat. John Fox's name is on there.
Coaches on the hot seat.
Coaches on the hot seat, yeah. So John Fox's name is on there. Hugh Jackson is not. So Hugh Jackson gets to operate from a place where I understand I've got time. What if all of a sudden things are going south? John Fox has to make decisions in a hurry that aren't necessarily in the best interest of long-term for Mitch Trubisky, but are going to save him his job in the here and now by saying, all right, we got this kid out here, now I need time.
Those are things that have to be taken into consideration. Again, Fox is not a 39-year-old coach. He's a guy who's been around the block, but he's also on his fourth coaching job and isn't going to get a fifth. So, or his third coaching job isn't going to get a fourth, I think it is. Right? He was in Carolina, and then he was in Denver.
Right.
So, I mean, do coaches sometimes do things in the best interest of keeping their own jobs? Of course they do, and you can criticize that, but then you would be being unrealistic. Everyone does that.
And it's not a criticism, but it's just acknowledging that while those quarterback situations are similar, they're driven by guys with agendas and places in their coaching career that are in a much different place, so you can expect the decision-making to probably reflect that.
All right, let's roll on. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance, creators of the Name Your Price tool. Choose from a range of coverage options and pick the price that works for you. So Mike Golic, Sr. and Jr. here. One of the big stories of this week certainly were the comments of Josh Rosen, which it turns out were from an interview that he did several months ago, but just was posted by Bleacher Report this week. And he is the opinionated, I'm not sure what the right word is, young quarterback from UCLA with all the potential in the world. He's a guy who trouble is the wrong word, but certainly got a lot of attention. He's got a hot tub at his room and all kinds of things that have gone on with him. He also might be the first pick in the draft next year, depending on how the season plays out. And he had some comments this past that were posted this past week, in which most notably he said, football and college don't really go together. And Mike Golic Sr. was put off, I think, to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would that be a good description of your reaction to it?
A bit off that line of football and academics in college you can't do both. When there is a long litany of thousands of people, including an academic All-American sitting to my left, who did do both.
Including Josh Rosen, who never said you can't do both.
Right.
Said they don't go together.
Said they don't,
Which the comparison that we got brought up a lot was people work full-time jobs and go to college. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure if you ask those people, do these things go together? They'd probably say no. But they'd probably say they would rather do it. They can, but my point is he never said you can't do this. He said they don't go together well. But he never said you can't do it, and that's what everyone seemed to want to make it about, which I had a problem with.
Tell me why. What was your problem with it?
Because that's disingenuous, and it knocks off a good point he was going. Look at the body of that interview and tell me he wasn't knocked off a place that he was going. He was asked about and talking about the fact that some guys just really aren't cut out for college and are brought there because of their ability in athletics. And then he asked, wait, you mean some people aren't supposed to go in college? That was the sentiment of the next question. And what is a kid with the background of Josh Rosen, who comes from, not too dissimilar from mine, who comes from a background where you come from a bit of money and you're in a position where I've got a background and an understanding and the ability and the tools to use my academic career to the utmost potential of it. What does a guy who's in that position, who's already kind of seen as maybe a little bit elitist because of that background, say when he's asked that question, wait, some guys don't belong in college? How does he sound if he says yes to that question? Probably not very good, and especially doesn't reflect very good to his peers, who he clearly cares about based on the rest of these statements, who he's out here advocating for in all the rest of these statements. So he gets knocked off, and he says the answer that's going to get him the least blowback here, and we all attach to that one idea that these two things don't go together, and we make can't, and go down a whole bag of worms that is not the point of the sentiment of what he was talking about.
Well, we had agreed on in talking some of the things he said. Do some guys, maybe don't want to go to college? Well, absolutely. Do some guys get pushed through to easier classes? Absolutely. I mean, we completely admit that. But I still, even the premise of don't go together, not can't go together, they have been. I mean, they have been for years. I mean, people have been able to do it and do it well. Last I checked, a guy like Andrew Luck was an engineer major. We've seen the Myron Rolls of the world go on for
Rhodes Scholarship.
Rhodes Scholars. We've seen, and I'm picking just a couple, but it's happened over and over and over again. So it can be done and can be done well.
I understand that, but just because things have been done over the course of a long period of time doesn't always mean they're the right way to do things. And his point off of that, listen, I openly said he misspoke, and I heard Damian say the same thing with you guys. Probably could have chosen his words better, and as a 20-year-old kid, this is a good, easy way to learn. Kind of like Jamal Adams. You learn very early on in a low-stakes environment that choosing your words right is okay. But with Jamal Adams, we were all cool and comfortable saying, well, you know what he was trying to get at. Here, we don't seem to be willing to give Josh that benefit of the doubt, and I'm very curious as to why. And I think it's because it's something that kind of upsets the establishment a little bit.
No, I understand what you're saying, but even I'm not saying he said they can't do it. He said you can't do it or you can't be done. Even how he meant it, I disagree with. I guess that's my point. So I'm not taking it further than saying it can't be done. I'm saying the way he said it, the intent he meant, I don't agree with. I mean, what's the better way? Well,
no, the intent he meant, and this is the way I took it, and taking it in context with the other answers, which is you look at the intent behind that. These things don't marry up very well together already. He used himself as an example. He's a kid that could graduate in 3.5 years and pursue an MBA, but because of football and academics, and there are classes you can't always take, and you've got to move things around.
Choices you have to make.
Yeah, choices you have to make, which is fine. That's an example he used. He's saying, it's difficult for me, and I'm a guy who has these plans for after football.
Right.
Look at some of my teammates who are less equipped to handle this load academically. Look at what some of them are pushed into and asked to do. They work on the same schedule as me, but they're not operating with the same tool bag. And all he asked is, why can't schools do more to help some of those guys out? Why can't they take a more active interest? Now, he doesn't have the answer, and he doesn't need to because none of us do.
I'm curious as to, because, listen, we all went to Notre Dame, and we see the help they offer you there.
I'm saying that's not everywhere.
Okay,
though.
but
that's not the meat of the bell curve.
It's not everywhere, but I mean, what is universal everywhere? I mean, that the intent is to help, and it can, as Nick Saban said, we take guys, who maybe would struggle, and we put them in a position to, if they're not making the NFL, they have a degree. We'll help them along the way. Now, some of that certainly can be disingenuous. I get it because they're helping them on the football field. But if they didn't have football, where would they be? So at least it's giving them a chance. I'm not sure of everybody who is agreeing with Josh Rosen. What's your answer? Everybody universally, 100% of all colleges do it the right way? Give me a break. Nothing happens, in a vacuum that way.
I understand nothing happens in a vacuum that way, but to ignore the meat of the bell curve in this, because we can bring up Myron Rolle and Andrew Luck and me and all these guys, but at the end of the day, those are outliers on this, right? The meat of the bell curve is a bunch of guys who probably aren't qualified to be where they are, who don't want to be and aren't equipped with what they are. Like, think about that, too. Like, I came from a background because of you guys where I understood and valued education.
Right.
There's guys that are coming up just trying to make sure that they can take care of their family however it's possible.
So let me ask you quickly, what's the answer to that?
I'm not saying you have to have an answer. Josh Rosen's a 20-year-old kid. Of course he doesn't have the answer, but pointing out a problem and saying something is wrong doesn't make him the bad guy.
But I guess I would ask, I mean, what's the problem? You get guys, okay, maybe aren't as equipped, but they're getting scholarships, they're being put in a position to, they're getting, and a lot of times, sometimes we use this against them, they're skated through and put in easier classes.
And how does that help them on the back end then? If you go in there, because the idea of a degree is great, but we're even seeing that that's not giving regular kids the returns on normal
without a doubt. There are so many guys that get a degree and do something completely else, or whatever they learn, they have to learn something completely new. I agree with that.
Something else, or don't learn through the process. If you're putting kids in easy classes and passing them through just so they can stay on the field, which I can't knock coaches for and administration fundamentally either, because they've got jobs and families to feed. But you've created an industry in college athletics that's a multi-billion-dollar industry where all of these other people are making money and have that real-life stakes on the line. And just because you've paid these student-athletes in IOUs and asked them to accept it on the back end doesn't mean you can screw up the process in the middle and just say, well, we're giving you this thing. It's sort of a promise that something might happen, but then we're not going to put the value in the meat of that process where it belongs.
But isn't there a responsibility of a student at some point as well?
There absolutely is, but when that responsibility also, you're brought there because of your skill set in football. You, in theory, want to play football.
Right.
And so when all of your coaches and those people on down the line are saying, listen, not so many words, and you dealt with this in Philadelphia, and I dealt with this to a certain extent. When you appear to have outside interests and want to put your time and effort in other places, not always received very well.
You're right.
And so when you get those messages from a coaching staff that the thing I came here to do, the thing I love, and the thing my best skill set is in might be infringed upon because I want to also explore this second half of things, how is that supposed to incentivize a kid to want to go out there and do those things?
Mike and Mike were presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, a really good discussion. What I would just add to it is, Mike Sr., in response to what you're saying, what is the answer? What Mikey is pointing out here is, if you listen to everything that you just described, and I think you described the situation accurately, what do we actually have here? We are making a business transaction. This is a business agreement that is being made between a 17-year-old kid and a university. But the actual benefit that is being received by the kid, with apologies to all of the people who graduate with all of this debt, I understand that you don't want to hear this. But the reality is, the agreement that you are making, it is by no means equitable to the kids. They have no option. You have no choice. If you want to have any chance to play professional football in this country, you have no choice but to sign that scholarship.
But that's what it is, man. That's life. What's the lesser of two evils here? Not let them go to school because of their skill set and have them go in easier classes and say, you know what? You can't go to school. You're not good enough. You're on your own. Go do whatever you want to do.
But those aren't the only two options.
What's the other option?
The other option is for the universities to hold up their end of the bargain more. They don't give out 85 full-ride scholarships to kids on football teams out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
The university's getting something out
of
this.
They want a return.
And so
I get it.
But I guess that's my point, is when we talk about other people who say, well, normal students aren't getting this, that, and the other, the university doesn't have an investment in you. You're not making that university money. You hear the statement all the time, no one's lining up in stadiums to go watch a Chem Lab. And that's not a knock on them, but the school's not getting things out of you. So the least they can do is make sure, all right, we've got this agreement. We're going to live up fully to it for you, because if you don't live up to it fully on your end as a student athlete, what do? More often than not,
listen,
they find a way to get you out of it.
And the kids in the Ken Lab also, by the way, don't live with all of the restrictions that are placed on all of these varsity athletes, which are numerous and in many cases ridiculous.
Yeah, well, listen, that's true and something that needs to be dealt with. I get it. But I guess the whole process to me is what's better.
I understand that there's not better available right now, but
there could be better available right now.
I mean, I'm saying it's not available right now.
I'm talking about the general of a student, an athlete coming to college, maybe not as well equipped as others, as well equipped as you or a Josh Rosen or an Andrew Luck, someone not as equipped as well, a Myron Rolle, but still the option to them is better than the alternative. I guess that's the point. It doesn't mean we can't try and fix some things and make them better, but still right now, all we can do, it's like the marijuana thing. We all think marijuana should be legalized everywhere. But the bottom line is it's still illegal and you can't get test positive for it.
So that doesn't mean we shouldn't be sitting here saying legalize
it.
No,
and that's fine.
So that's what Josh Rosen is doing.
I said that's all Josh Rosen did is point out and say, you know what? And the thing about it and why it resonated so well for me is because he wasn't talking about him. He was saying this is a problem that some of my teammates deal with, guys that I'm sure he knows at other places that aren't taking as good a care of you academically as UCLA is, that aren't giving you the help that Notre Dame is, that they do a really good job with,
right?
That he knows guys that aren't doing that. So I don't know why he's the bad guy for pointing out what a lot of us, the rest of us have, just because he's inside the system now, and we generally don't tend to respond favorably to college athletes voicing strong opinions. That's just not a thing that happens. Sam Darnold, and this is not a knock on him, probably going to be the number one quarterback, came out and said, you know what? That's Josh. That's what he does. That's not what I'm about. I'm just here to play football. And people love that.
Right.
The people love the kid that's just going to line up. He's going to be appreciative of what he's got. And that's good enough for most people. And Josh says, you know what? This could be a little bit better. I'm not saying it's terrible now. I don't think he came out and said he was living in squalor necessarily.
No, he did not, and some of the points he said were true. I guess just his overview I had an issue with.
All right, let's pause on that thought, and I'd love to get back to it as we continue. Mike and Mike, again, presented by Progressive Insurance, our guest on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We'll go to a different topic coming up next because Woj will join us, Adrian Wojnarowski. I still can't do it, but he's the best in the business, and he's got enormous insight into Melo and Kyrie and more, and he's live right after this word.
And by the way, very quickly, your shirt that's on my son right now is completely pitted out.
I know.
You want it back?
It's a little musty.
You want it back?
Yeah, well, I mean, I need it back. I've got plans for the day, and I can't wear this shirt for them.
Your plans just got a little soggier.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
I'm told Schefter is ready to go, and I'm going to give him the floor. Here's our NFL insider, Adam Schefter, with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line with a little insight into something we should expect to hear today. Schefter, what do you have?
Well, good morning, Mike and Mike. And essentially, we've got the day that I think a lot of people have expected all summer long and waited for all summer long, and that's the day that the NFL is likely to rule on the Ezekiel Elliott investigation that it has been conducting for over a year. Now, this has gone back and forth so many different times, so I want to preface this by saying there's informed and educated speculation, but it is just that. It is not actual reporting of facts. I'm just giving you the stuff that I've been able to pick up this week, over the last month, over the course of the last year. Again, we think the NFL is going to rule today. We think he's going to be suspended. We think it's going to be, I think, more severe than people think. And the reason I say that is because here is the whole issue. The question becomes, how is the league going to frame the violation here? Is it looking at Ezekiel Elliott as a domestic violence offender? If it is, and if it has evidence to that effect, you are looking at a 6-game suspension. That's what the domestic violence policy carries. And by all accounts, that is what they've been doing all along. Now, you'll remember Jerry Jones saying there's no evidence of any domestic violence in this investigation and in this report. And that's where it gets interesting and gets back to the question of how is the league going to frame the results of its investigation? Has it found enough to think that there's a domestic violence issue here? And if it is, then you are looking at 6 games. Now, if they decide to go a different route, and they decide to say Ezekiel Elliott has violated the personal conduct policy for a accumulation of behavior, and let's be very clear, the league has in fact considered all the events that have taken place over the last year. Don't be confused by anything else. So when I say that, I mean any bar incident that he's had, and by the way, I think there have been more than have been reported. We're talking about the woman on St. Patrick's Day where he pulled down her shirt. We're talking about being charged with a misdemeanor for speeding. We're talking about whatever else the league has found. The league could decide to say, okay, you know what? I don't know what they're going to do. We don't have enough evidence for domestic violence, but there's enough here for personal conduct to say we're going to get you for 2 games or 4 games or whatever the league determines. If the league decides to go down the domestic violence path, nobody, well, the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones and Zeke Elliott, is going to fault them for being too punitive, right? Because here's the problem. The league had a chance on domestic violence with Ray Rice and didn't get it right. The league had a chance on Josh Brown on domestic violence and didn't get it right. It suspended him 1 game. And then a couple months later, his journals surface where there's actual documentation about an abusive relationship. So if the league is wrong, and the league doesn't even have enough evidence, and I don't know what they do and don't have. I know that they've met with the accuser on multiple occasions, okay? So, again, there's going to be all the various sides. But if they err to the side of caution, do you think anybody other than the Dallas Cowboys is going to be upset about that? Because they haven't done that in the past with previous domestic violence cases. So to pull it together here, the bottom line is that we think there's going to be a ruling today. We think there's going to be a suspension. And it becomes a question of how the league decides to frame it. If it's domestic violence, it's fairly black and white. It's 6 games. If the league decides to go a different route through personal conduct, it could be anywhere from 1 to 6 games. We don't know. And if the league decides to go domestic violence route, we may be looking at a prolonged story because I'm sure Ezekiel Elliott, Jerry Jones, their legal team, the Dallas Cowboys, they'll be very upset with this because they don't believe, in reading the investigation that the league has done for over a year, that there's enough in there to convict Ezekiel Elliott for a crime that he's never been charged or arrested for, by the way. Okay? And I'll give you more here. To the point of the history of the NFL with domestic violence. This is an investigation that started when Ezekiel Elliott was called in to be with the NFL for the first time last September. The next time he's called in is December, 3 months later. And the only thing that really changed in that time, well, there's other things. I don't know the details of the case, but I do know this. The Josh Brown incident surfaced between that time and October, and there was increasing criticism for all involved again. So, again, reading between the lines, the Zeke Elliott case that at first didn't appear as if it might amount to much, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, took on a much more serious tone, I think, at that point in time. And it has continued to go on to the point where then Ezekiel Elliott and his people delayed turning over evidence, which delayed this case, and the league wants to make sure it gets it right. And here we are today, finally, August 11th. We believe there's going to be a ruling. And really, to me, the key question becomes, how does the league want to frame the evidence it has?
And so we'll wait and see. This is surprising. It's only surprising to me in the sense that this is not, I think, what we had been led to expect for the weeks and months leading up to this thing. But the last couple of days, you're starting to get this inkling. And there's Adam Schefter with the very latest telling you expect it potentially. Schefter, how would we characterize that? We expect it today. We know it will be today.
I don't know it will be today. I mean, I don't know how to say. I believe it's going to be today. Yeah. I believed it was going to be this week all along. I believed once we got past the first couple of days, it would be Thursday or Friday. It wasn't Thursday, so by the process of elimination, we think it would be today.
We think it'll be today. All right, Schefty, thanks a million for
Thanks,
the
Adam.
very latest there. That's Adam Schefter with us again in the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Mike and Mike presented by Shell Pennzoil. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. Again, if they do decide to characterize this, to classify it, if you will, as a domestic violence incident, then the policy says it's 6 games.
Well, again, the policy says it's 6 games, but there is leeway to make it both more if it's egregious or less if they feel it deserves less. And we have seen that part of it. So while it says 6 as the headline, it can be less or more depending.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Our friend Adrian Wojnarowski has made his way into our studio as there's a ton of basketball to discuss. Please tell me I got it right.
It's a good job.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
That was
you.
nice.
Yeah.
I've struggled with this.
Yes, you have.
And I'm working very hard at it, but Woj is dropping bombs left and right all over the place. So let's bring some basketball into what's been a very busy football conversation day. Let's start with the easy part, and that's the Carmelo Anthony conversations. Where are we right now?
Well, New York and Houston re-engaged here in the last few days and started to talk again about ways to do a deal. Now, they need a third team. There's no straight-on, one-on-one deal that at least New York's willing to do. They don't want to take on Ryan Anderson, $60 million in 3 years. That's the easy deal from Houston's point of view, but New York's not doing that deal. They need another team, maybe 2 other teams, potentially, because right now Carmelo is only waiving that no trade for Houston for now. And so New York had paused that conversation when Scott Perry got hired as GM in July, tried to get a conversation going with Carmelo about how comfortable he might be with coming back to the team. He made it clear, let's get a trade done. So that's where they are now, and they have 6 weeks till training camp to see if they can find an avenue.
How much is it putting handcuffs on the Knicks for Carmelo just saying Houston? I mean, where is the line of them saying, well, listen, we can't do it. We can't get a good enough deal. You're going to have to open up your options for him.
And that's what they want. They want him to open up those options. And the team to watch in there is Portland, because this has become very much of a recruiting league. It's almost like a modern day AAU travel basketball model where, James Harden played a role in convincing Chris Paul, a big role in convincing Chris Paul to come to Houston and play. And so right now you have Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum, who's that tremendous backcourt in Portland. They've made progress, I'm told, with Carmelo Anthony and piquing his interest on that Blazers team. So if the Blazers were able to come up with a deal, a package that worked for New York, then it gives Carmelo something to think about. And again, they've made inroads with him, I'm told. And CJ is in New York right now playing. You saw some video yesterday, him playing pickup with Melo. And think about that team in Portland. If they could do a deal for Melo with McCollum, Lillard, Yusuf Nurkic, who played just tremendous basketball for them, the young center down the stretch, and you put Carmelo on that team, if they could piece together a deal that didn't with the rest of their team picks, that top 4 outside of Golden State stacks up pretty well with almost anybody in the West.
How motivated is Carmelo? I understand how motivated the Knicks are to move on from him. It makes all the sense in the world. How motivated is Carmelo to get out of there? Because I said to Mike earlier this morning, if they wait him out, and he's right now only giving them Houston as an option, at some point, someone needs to say to him, you do realize what you're signing up for is another year of this, and you may be delighted that Phil is gone, but your team is still going to be bad. You are still wasting what remains of some semblance of your prime in a situation where you have no chance to win. How motivated do you think he ultimately will be to get out?
Well, that's what the Knicks are curious to find out, is that once they get into camp, start playing and see where the team is. Phil Jackson spent the better part of a year trying to run Carmelo out, waived the no trade, publicly embarrassing him at times. And so it took Carmelo a long time to get to a point where he said, all right, I'm willing to waive the no trade, leave the Knicks. And then all of a sudden a new regime takes over and they say, well, hey, we're open to having you back. He wasn't ready to go back on that, but he's always loved playing in New York. He's lived through the losing. And I think for the Knicks, the one thing that I know they've told Carmelo is, when you come back here, you're not going to hear that from us anymore. Scott Perry, their new GM, has essentially told Carmelo, I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to call you out in the media. That's not going to happen anymore. We're going to make it comfortable for as long as you're here. And the Knicks are trying in good faith to honor his request on the trade because they know they're the ones who started it and they're the ones who pushed for it, and they gave him the no-trade clause. And I know there's a school of thought of, well, he's holding them hostage. Well, that's why a player gets a no-trade clause, to have control over that. Phil Jackson's the one who gave it to him. He didn't have to. And so, but I think the Knicks want to see, once he gets to camp, if he does want to move on and they can't get a deal with Houston, and again, it's a very difficult pathway with Houston, does he start to open up and put more teams on? And Portland is a team at the top of that because he looks at McCollum, Lillard, and says, hey, that's about as good as a tandem among the teams interested in me outside of Houston that there is.
If he doesn't open up his options, and could that be leverage on his part for the Knicks to buy him out? Will they think about doing that at all?
They've resisted that from the beginning. That's a lot of what, when it came to a head with Phil Jackson, was the organization, he wanted to just buy him out.
Right, and the organization
said
not.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's $54 million over 2 years. There's no appetite right now in New York to do it. It can always change. Money is never an object with Dolan. I mean, it never has been. He's wasted a lot of it, spent a lot of it. But their feeling is we are going to get assets for him. We're going to get something. We'll see how realistic the Knicks are. We'll see how realistic the Knicks are in terms of what they can get for him. And he isn't for everybody. Where Melo is in his career at 33 and such a big number. Let's say hypothetically Portland does that deal for him. He costs them in luxury tax. They're going to pay a $100 million luxury tax bill in his second season of his deal. Now, Paul Allen will pay that because if the team's really good and committed, Paul Allen will spend that money. But that contract isn't for everybody in the league.
Mike and Woj in our studio, Adrian Orjanowski. And that brings us then to something that you were talking about last night on television that I don't think most of our fans are aware of as we ponder the trade demand / request made by Kyrie Irving in Cleveland, that there is a date looming in December that might actually change the paradigm a little bit. So maybe don't expect to see Kyrie dealt in these next couple of weeks. Explain that.
Well, one option for Cleveland is to wait December 15th. Players who signed free agent deals this summer become eligible to be traded. So let's say hypothetically Minnesota wanted to get involved. Jeff Teague signed a free agent deal this summer. They can't trade him till December 15th. And you go through the league, go through rosters who signed this summer. So that December 15 date potentially opens up a lot, just more possible deals for them to do. Now, do they want to wait that long? I think, listen, they would prefer to do this before training camp, but there's a lot of pressure on that Cleveland organization to get a maximum value for him because he's the one asset now who can set them up. Let's be honest, post LeBron. If LeBron leaves in free agency, they get nothing. Kevin Love doesn't nearly have the value he had when he walked in the door there. Kyrie's the one they have to get a return on. They can't do a bad deal for him.
Is this turned into more than maybe Kyrie? Again, we're all just speculating. Does Kyrie just want to go be the man somewhere? What's the reasoning? Is part of the reasoning, though, now that we hear the Dave McMenamin talk of him going for days without talking to his teammates during the playoffs, is it turned sour with relationships, do we think, on that team?
I think that this is more about, and from the beginning it's been with Kyrie, was getting control of his future, his career, and not being at the mercy of what LeBron's going to do at the end of the 17-18 season. That if LeBron leaves and leaves him behind with a team that he just doesn't fit, the pieces don't fit around him, that he wants to have a voice in where he goes from here. And that was a big part of this trade request. More, as much as, yes, he'd like to have a team built around him. There's no question that's part of it. But if you've looked at through the years, everyone has had to react to what LeBron did, had to react in Cleveland the first time, Miami, leaving there. This is a player saying, I'm getting out ahead of this thing.
Which makes sense. It's actually, of all the different things that are happening, that's the one that makes sense. So the way I'm reading what you're saying is they're looking to make a move involving Kyrie that will not necessarily be to try and win one more championship in the year left they have with LeBron, but a bigger picture move that will set them up for a post-LeBron world. So where does LeBron fit into that? Because he's going to be 33 when we come out on the other side of this thing, and I understand that he's in the greatest shape of anyone ever, and that Tom Brady is 40 and everything else. But every year he doesn't win a title is another year he doesn't win a title. Where does he stand in all of this?
Well, this is by LeBron not being committed to coming back in Cleveland, by not telling them, hey, I'm in. You know, Kevin Durant was on a one-year deal in Golden State. They knew he was coming back, and they planned accordingly. By LeBron not giving them direction yet on it, and it's his right. He's a free agent. He can wait it out. Cleveland has to move with the idea we just don't know if he's going to be here. They are not going to do a deal that is all in this year, veterans, big contracts. They need a really good younger piece that may not help them this year. They'd like to get both for now and for the future. That may not be realistic, but I think if they had, I know that they're looking at this with the longer view. That does not help LeBron James in this last season, but without a commitment from him, how else do they proceed?
Do we all get worked up now with LeBron and I'm coming home or going home or whatever, and he's talking
when
about
I get home to LA?
When I get home to LA, I mean,
I don't know. To me, the telling part is that organization is acting as if they're very unsure whether he's staying, and they are not going to just load up to convince him to stay and put a team out there that straps them financially if he walks out the door. That's not been their intentions so far in trade talks, I'm told.
All right, we'll see what happens. Again, will it happen in the next few weeks? Will it take into December? All those things are still to come, and you know that he'll have his ear to the ground for us. Adrian Wojnarowski, it's always our pleasure. Great work. Thank you so much.
Guys.
Good to see you.
Thanks,
That's Woj with us. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We'll get Michael Collins in from the PGA coming up, but right now it is time, for better or for worse, for this.
It's time for another edition of Love It,
oh, this is fun.
or Shove It with Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio.
Love it or shove it, which is brought to you by Granger, is also always brought to you by Bubba, who is back with us here. And I stopped into Bubba's little booth upstairs earlier this morning.
Oh, yeah.
I had a few things to do, and
had a good chat.
Bubba seemed revved up. He's excited about today's Love It or Shove It. He's got props for us today.
Absolutely.
How are you, Bubs?
Doing great. Yeah, back on the board again for some reason. Here we go.
You seem excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to wake up again at 3 a.m.
You know what? Sometimes it's good to go back to your roots, don't you think, Bubba?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
All right, Bubba's got a variety of headlines, and we will decide if we love them or shove them. Bubba, let's go.
Of Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, and Christian McCaffrey will have the best rookie season. Love it or shove it?
Shove it.
You shove it. I think it'll be between Dalvin Cook and McCaffrey. We'll see how he's used when Cam is quarterbacking. I would probably lean toward Dalvin Cook. I really like what he does. We'll see if the shoulder injury comes back to haunt at all. But between the running scheme they have in Minnesota, his ability to catch a ball out of the backfield, I look for him. I think Fournette's going to be really that runner than catching a ball out of the backfield. And
but I think they're going to give him the ball a lot.
But you know what has to happen? An O-line has to block for him. It's not a very good offensive line in Jacksonville. So of those three, I would lean to Dalvin Cook.
I understand that, but they've got a questionable quarterback situation. They have, if these guys kind of come together, they should have a good defense. They have a ton of players on that defense, some of whom have been hurt. Yeah. I think Fournette is going to get the ball a lot this year.
Defense has nothing to do with your offensive line and running the ball. You average a little under.
No, but you're going to ask your quarterback not to make huge mistakes. You're just going to try and run it and play defense.
So the defense will have 8-9 in the box and say we're going to stop Fournette because the quarterback can't pass the ball.
Well, how are we measuring the best rookie season? If you're asking me who is going to have the most yards from scrimmage, my prediction is that of those three, McCaffrey will be third. That he will be third on the list of those three as far as who will have the most yards from scrimmage this season.
Yeah, I mean, because you do have obviously another running back in Carolina, along with McCaffrey, and Fournette's going to be the guy. But I'm going to lean to Dalvin Cook with what he can do and the opportunities that he's going to get there.
Me too. He's my pick for Rookie of the Year, so we both shove it. Bubba, next.
Both Kyrie Irving and Carmelo Anthony will start next season with their current teams.
Wow.
Love it or shove it?
I'm going to say shove it. I'm going to say, Woj, I'm glad that he came in here and he cleared that December 15th thing up.
Yeah.
While it is an interesting little sidebar, it isn't as definitive as I thought it was when I was reading about it this morning. He was talking about it on TV last night. I didn't see it. I read it. And now that I hear him tell it, while it really only applies to players who signed this summer, if they're motivated to move him, and I think they are, they will. So I believe he'll be dealt. I'd go Carmelo 50-50, and Kyrie, I believe, will be gone. So I will say shove it.
The word both makes me shove it, to think that both are going to be start the season with their current team. So I will shove that as well.
Bubba, next.
The Dodgers will not lose another series this season. They haven't lost one since early June. Love it or shove it.
I have to shove that. I just don't think that pace can stay. They're going to wrap things up tomorrow, the way it's going right now. So I absolutely don't see that.
I don't think there's a lot of motive. You tell me, do you think there's a lot of motivation in trying to break the all-time wins record? The Seattle Mariners, who didn't win anything that year, won 116 games, which is the record for most wins in the regular season. The 98 Yankees won 114, and then they won the World Series.
Right.
You know, in basketball, the Warriors went after that record. Do you think the Dodgers go after that? Is that of any consequence to them? I've got to believe the answer is no.
At 87 now, so...
Well, we did the math yesterday. Yeah, you did the math on what it would take.
They needed 37 wins. They got one last night, so it would be 36 more wins.
36 and 12, I think they have to go the rest of the way. So that would be the only reason that they sort of keep the pedal to the metal.
I don't know if there's motivation for that, or the motivation should obviously be let's set ourselves up to be in position to win the World Series.
Do you think most people knew that the Mariners had the record?
That's the thing about it, because they didn't end it with a World Series. Yeah. I think it's lost.
Like the 72 wins that the Bulls had in 1996, people knew that number. Yeah. Like that's a number everybody knew.
I don't think many people knew the Mariners.
I don't either. So I think we're both going to shove it. The Dodgers will definitely lose at least one more series the rest of the year. Bubba with Love It or Shove It next.
Le'Veon Bell is hurting himself with his holdout. Love it or shove it.
That's what the GM for Pittsburgh said. Listen, as far as money, because he can't get any more. There's no monetary value to this holdout. He's not getting fined because he hasn't signed the deal, so technically he's not under contract. He can't do a different deal. The absolute most he can play for is $12.1 million for this year. That's it. So the only thing he's not doing is he's not at camp. So the thought is he hurting himself by not being at camp? Listen, he's a guy that could step in and play well right away. He doesn't need to get all the hits you get in camp, even though you could certainly, dictate how much that happens. My biggest worry, my biggest worry is when you're not playing football in football pads, in football plays, you're not getting in football shape. And you have the possibility of all of a sudden that hamstring, that quad, some muscle strain when you come back. So that has always been my biggest fear, and that is a monster fear for a running back.
On August 11th, I'm not worried about it. I'm going to say shove it, for exactly the point that you just made. If he doesn't go in, because he's deciding this himself. He'll just decide when he feels like going. So long as he does it with at least 2-3 weeks to get himself into that football shape, I think will wind up having been completely irrelevant. If he decides to take this all the way to the end to try and make a point, or just because he doesn't feel like going in, at that point I'd start worrying about it.
A little bit,
I'm not worried about it now.
No, I'm not worried about it now, if the question is right now. But
so is he hurting himself with his holdout? Right now I'll say shove it.
No, I'll shove that too. I don't think he is right now, no.
Bubba, one more.
Major League Baseball to use nicknames on jerseys for Players Weekend. Love it or shove it.
What's not to love?
What's above loving it?
I wish they would do it more.
I adore it.
It's fantastic.
I want to marry it.
It's a little much.
I want to live with it for the rest of my life and have children with it.
All right.
I mean, it's how could you not do this? And there are 58 players in the sport who decided not to do it. For those who don't know what we're talking about, there's a date at the end of the month, I think it's the 25th, whatever it is, that all of the players in baseball have the option of just putting nicknames on the backs of their jerseys, whatever they want, and they can be creative and fun and whatever it is. God forbid we should have fun in this game.
I have no problem. I don't have a problem with 58. Maybe they don't have nicknames. Maybe they just.
But they could put anything on there.
But maybe you just don't feel like it.
Yankee jerseys, you tell me. Brett Gardner is putting Gardner on there, which is, of course, just his last name. Now, the Yankees don't ever have names on their jerseys.
Right.
So that's adding something. But, I mean, you could put a nickname. You could put your kid's name. You could put anything you want on there. For the guys who are just putting their own names on, isn't that kind of a killjoy?
No.
It's not killing the fun of this thing?
No, not at all. If you don't want to put something on there.
What would you put? If they'd let you put a nickname on the back of your jersey when you were playing.
What am I putting on there? I know you put Greeny on there.
Yeah, you're just kind of Golic.
Yeah.
But what would you, you could have put anything. You could have put, Love you, Chris. You could have put he hate me. You could have put just standing there.
I'm just standing on the line of scrimmage.
That would have been great.
No, it wouldn't have.
If you were playing, I would have paid you however much it would have taken you to do it.
$1 million.
To just put on hashtag just standing there.
That's not funny.
Yes, it would.
No, I'm not laughing at all.
It would be funny.
I think it's a great idea, but
too.
if someone doesn't want to do it, I don't care.
I have an issue with it. I have an issue with them not wanting to do it. That's Bubba to Shove It. It's brought to you by Granger and I'm out of the job. Granger's got your back. Granger for the ones who get it done. And that was Bubba getting it done
Bubba.
in a big
All
way.
right.
Well done, Bubs.
Sure, yeah. Let me know if you want to exchange shirts later.
Okay, no, I don't see
my
that
God.
happening under
I'll
any
just,
circumstance.
swap this right now.
Now, I thought they were props. When I stepped in your office this morning, didn't you say you had props?
You just weren't listening.
We lost. Didn't you? Did you or did you not say you had stuff sitting
I
there?
don't remember. I have some T-shirts. I got some Mets jerseys. I got Pavarotti. I got a picture of Ted. I got some things. Yeah.
He does look like. Does he look more like Luciano Pavarotti or Q from Impractical Jokers?
No,
he looks like both of them.
He looks like Zach Martin from the Cowboys,
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
about to be
There's
the
so many
highest paid
options.
guard in all the game.
But that's not a person whose face most people know what he looks like.
Okay, but that's not what you do. That's who he looks like, though.
We're going to have to get a picture of him. Get me a picture of Zach Martin.
Split shot of Zach Martin and Bubba.
A picture of
Look alike.
Pavarotti and a picture of Q from Impractical Jokers.
All right, I'm going to tell you, everyone will vote for Zach Martin.
And then Golic will tell us which one he looks the most
A lot
like.
of good-looking guys.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Here's some of that Twitter reaction. Brian tweets, at least baseball's allowing players to have a little fun. Are you watching NFL? You know, that's not really fair. This idea may have come from the NFL's idea. Remember last year they had some specific times set aside where they could wear whatever cleats they wanted and everything else. They've had to be strict. I don't. Are they sometimes the uniform police to the nth degree? Maybe. But I understand it. You can't just let players put whatever they want on their jerseys or their cleats or whatever it is all the time. I understand that because, A, they'll start selling advertising on it, which is
they will.
competing with the business. And B, maybe more directly, something that one person supports, maybe something that another, you're not putting the name of a charity or the name of something that you believe in up there because now all of a sudden, you're creating a conversation where it doesn't belong.
Yeah, you are. It gets tough because if you open that door, if you try and give an inch, people are going to take a foot and then they're going to take a yard and then they're going to take more. So it gets difficult to do. I get that.
There's also a lot of reaction through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed to a lot of the NFL discussion that we were having earlier this morning. And most of it is about Mitchell Trubisky. And Bears fans are doing exactly what they shouldn't, but they should.
Sure.
Which is to say, if you know anything about football, you know that how well he played last night only means a tiny little bit. But rejoice in it. Why not? Because if he looked awful yesterday,
that's it.
Then you would be getting up this morning and you'd be screaming, fire Ryan Pace, fire the coach, get rid of everybody.
They blew it.
This guy stinks.
We're buried now. Glennon's not the long-term answer, and we don't have our long-term answer. This guy's awful. Absolutely. So while don't think you have the savior just yet, and that, you'll finally have a Pro Bowl quarterback since Jim McMahon, your first one since Jim McMahon, pull the reins on that. But, man, I tell you, it was a nice start. I really, really thought he played well. And as I said, the next move will come behind the scenes at practice where you're not allowed to be. He'll start to take some reps at some point for Mark Sanchez, and it'll go from there. And they'll just expose him to a little more, and a little more.
I believe that he will be the starting quarterback of the Bears at some point this year. I believe Deshaun Watson may very well be the starting quarterback of the Houston Texans week 1. I think there's a real chance of that. I think there's no chance of that with Trubisky.
I think there's no chance of that with Trubisky. Kaiser's going to be an interesting one in Cleveland because nobody has really grabbed hold of that. The expectations, I was going to say the expectations are low in Cleveland, but they're low in Chicago.
Right.
So, we're sitting there talking about the only difference of the two is Chicago supposedly got a bridge quarterback that the expectation was Glennon was going to be there, and he was highly capable of handling that bridge job and maybe more because he knows the writing on the wall. He knows he's basically auditioning for in another year or two and maybe shorter now for another team because Trubisky's going to be the guy here. But other than that, that's both teams are not expected to do well. Though if DeShone Kizer starts, we're going to be like, oh, okay. It's not like he had all the experience in the world either, playing in college. But if Trubisky started, it would be like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And unfortunately, it would be a little more held against Glennon in that case.
The other one that is of interest to me, and we're going to have Kenny Chesney in here in just a couple of minutes, and we'll talk to him about this because he'll be particularly interested, is the situation in New England. Jimmy Garoppolo was phenomenal last night, and everything we've seen from Garoppolo, and he does have a very small but legitimate sample of regular season games. It's not just preseason games with Garoppolo because he started last year before he got hurt when Brady was suspended. Garoppolo looked phenomenal again yesterday, and they're going to have a fascinating I guess it's a good problem to have, but they're going to have some fascinating decisions to make in New England if Brady continues to look like he's just going on. Because Garoppolo is not a guy that Bill wants to lose. I believe he believes he is the future of the franchise. So do you franchise tag him next offseason, which would leave you in the unique situation of having a guy making a lot more money as your backup quarterback than your starting quarterback? But I think it would make sense. I think that would be the sensible move.
It's going to get interesting, but as long as Brady is playing well, Brady's going to play. That's my opinion. I know Bill has cut bait early on guys, but that's not going to happen at the most important position if the guy's playing near the top.
I'm in agreement with you. So this buys you 2 more seasons from now. We'll be talking about Brady at 42 2 years from now. So you've got this year. Mm-hmm. Then if you decide to franchise tag Garoppolo, again, the franchise tag for a quarterback is a huge number.
And that's the only way you'll keep him because if you try and offer him a contract, somebody will offer him a big contract.
Correct.
And that New England will not do. I mean, they normally don't sign monster contracts anyway. They're not going to do it to the backup quarterback like that. So it would have to be a franchise tag, so it's going to be $20-some million.
And my self-serving note on that game, but it's not about me. This is about this kid, Austin Carr, who was a walk-on at Northwestern, and I mean the ultimate walk-on. He wasn't a preferred walk-on. No one invited him. He was a student who knocked on the coach's door and said, I'd like to try out for the football team. Made himself into the Big Ten Receiver of the Year last year. Inexplicably went undrafted, but it's not inexplicable because he's small. But that kid never dropped a pass in his entire life. I think he had 5 catches last night, including a gorgeous catch of a touchdown pass. Garoppolo is going to be, not only is he going to make that team, he is going to make Carr is not just going to make the Patriots, he's going to make a huge contribution on that team. Mark my words. He is.
Time will tell.
No. What are you poo-pooing, Austin Carr?
I'm just telling you, again, off of one preseason game.
No. I watched that kid play every snap he ever played in college.
I watch a lot of kids play every snap in college that end up not doing as much in the pros. We'll see. I hope he does. I did him in a bowl game, me and my son. He's a nice kid and a good player, but I'm going to pull the reins on making him a bust in the Hall of Fame just yet.
All right.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We are back in better than ever. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, except for the ones who were good enough to make their way to our studio. And what a delight it is anytime we have a chance to welcome the superstar Kenny Chesney, who is in town. He's playing at Mohegan Sun again tonight, and he's being honored at the Walk of Fame at Mohegan Sun today at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Kenny, it's always so great to see you. How have you been?
Thanks for having me back. I've been great. I've been really good.
Can I just say right off the bat, forget the entertainer and all that. Me, my wife, and Jake and my son Jake and his wife Jenny went to see Kenny and the gang last night, and so we got to hang out a little bit and talk. It's always great. But then we go into the Vibe Room, a place you can kind of hang out.
The Vibe Room, place to hang out where others can hang out. And it's. But what was in there? Not only some drinks, which is wonderful, candy, full size candy bars, full size. Not the little miniatures. I don't even know if you know. You probably know what's in there.
Yeah, I wouldn't eat that stuff.
I remember last time I saw there were the smaller ones. This time, just like I give out on Halloween. That's why I'm one of the popular houses on Halloween. We give out full-size candy bars. So that was very.
I bet you didn't eat one of them.
Oh, a monster Kit Kat bar.
Did you really?
It was one of them double supersizers that I had.
Wow.
Yeah. So forgetting all the entertaining stuff, that was one of the best parts of the night.
That's what you're the most impressed about last night. That's right.
If you start handing those out at shows, perhaps people will actually start coming.
But also you have a bunch of pictures in there, and one of the pictures, Greeny, was when we first met Kenny.
Yes,
was at the White House when with George Bush. What
was that for? That
was for the Little League baseball. They do t-ball on the lawn. Greeny and I were invited there to call the game, and then they had a dinner that night.
That's right.
And then you were at the dinner, obviously, and then you entertained us all as well. And that was
I remember
10
being
years ago.
very nervous because you were there in the Rose Garden.
Yeah.
I was up there singing with my guys, and Kevin Millar wanted to get up and sing with me.
Yep.
And I said, no, you can't do that. And so there was this big thing. But he actually got up and sang. But I remember being really nervous because the guy that I loved as a kid growing up, and the reason I played second base in high school was Joe Morgan. And I saw Joe Morgan walk in from my left, and that was even more nervous than in playing in front of the president. I saw Joe Morgan there, and I was like, wow, it was really surreal.
Yeah, the day was a T-ball game on the lawn where we were the announcers, and you sang. You either sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" or you sang the Star Spangled Banner. I can't remember which now. And then there was a dinner that night. It was a celebration of baseball, and after which you performed at the Rose Garden. But like everyone who was anyone in the game of baseball and us were there,
and us, yeah, exactly.
And it was that's one of my favorite memories, in all honesty, of all the years that we've been doing this. Was that whole experience?
The whole experience was great, and you know what? And it just goes to show you, the people that love sports and love music find a way to meet each other. Like there's no way that I would have met Mike Greenberg and Mike Golic without my love of sports and music in my life, And so for that, it
was great. And that was actually, Chris wasn't there. Your wife was there, Stacy.
Yes.
Jake came that one.
I sat with Stacy at the dinner.
You did.
Because they make you sit with people that you don't come with.
Right.
Yeah.
I sat with Ryan Sandberg. Golic sat with Hank Paulson. I didn't know who he was.
I sat with a dude who was, had a pretty good job
title. The Secretary of the Treasury.
Yeah. He didn't loan me any money, though. I asked him once I found that out. I said, you got a fin for me?
I was like, Stacy's like, I'm sitting with Kenny. And I was like, I'm sitting with Ryan Sandberg. And Golic says, I have no idea who this is.
This is who you're putting me with.
Fair enough. So anyway, let's get to business here because there's a million different things. I wonder how often this happens to you. So our producer, Drew Brooks, is going to see your show tonight. Okay. And he was grilling Golic before the show on what songs you did because there's two in particular that he wants to hear. So I'm guessing that when you have as wide a portfolio as you have now for as many years as you've been doing this, how do you decide? I've always wondered about this. How do you decide? You play how many songs in an average show? 20?
24.
24.
Yeah.
You could be choosing from 70, 80 probably at least, right? That would be immediately identifiable with you. How do you decide which ones you're going to play?
There's about 80% of the show that on any given tour that will stay the same. We have because we have a lot of stuff, the light show and everything's written to those songs. So those kind of stay, but we have about 4 or 5 songs that we can throw in and throw out. So if the producer has any requests tonight, I could throw those.
He does.
in.
What was it? Pirate Flag and American Kids.
Yeah,
you played them both last night.
Okay, then we'll probably do both those songs again tonight. But it's different. We like to keep it a little flexible, but we don't change it up too much. Because when I was a kid, when I would go to shows, and even as an adult when I would go to shows, I hated going to concerts where I didn't hear the songs I really wanted to hear. I'm not one of those guys that will go and play a bunch of album cuts just because I want to show the audience something different. I know they come to the shows and buy the tickets and buy the shirts and whatever because they want to hear what they've heard, what they sang along with in the shower or in the car or whatever it is, and that they live their life with. And so we stick to those.
Do you still hear it sometimes from people, though, of why didn't you play this? Or one of my favorites, quite honestly, is good stuff.
That's an example. So, all the time. But, you got all these songs, and you try to get them in, and thank God. But, there's always somebody going, I came all this way to hear that one song, and you didn't play it. When are you going to play it?
Right.
But,
you can't play them all.
Yeah.
And listen,
it's been a while since we played the good stuff.
Yeah.
The visual part of it also is interesting and completely unrelated. And by the way, Kenny Chesney is our guest here in our studios, if you needed to be told. I was they had recently, and they're doing these now more often. I saw one for David Bowie and one for the Rolling Stones. There is a museum display. It's more than a display. It's like a huge thing about Pink Floyd. It's their entire journey. It's in London. I was there on vacation, and it is from the beginning. Literally, it takes you through their entire career from the beginning to the present day, and it's got everything from like videos of them when they were all kids through their huge concerts and everything. And I think a lot of people credit them with really starting a lot of the visual experience that you see at these concerts, which is a long-winded way of setting up. That's a big part of what you're doing, right? I mean, you're not just getting up there like in the old days and just getting up there and playing a bunch of songs and rocking out. The visual experience at a huge concert is a huge part of what you're doing.
Well, it is, especially in the stadium environment. You know, and I contradict myself a lot because I love for the songs and the music to come first. That's what they actually come to see. But I also love really putting on a show. And the visual part of it, I think people would be really surprised at how much time we spend on the visual part of it. Because if you let the music lead, and that's great, but you can wrap it around all this visual stuff, it just makes the show a lot better. You know, in my opinion, it makes the experience better. But you're right, they are credited for a lot of that, and we spend a lot of time in preparation of going on the road. On the visual part.
Your stadium experience is incredible. I've seen it at a few stadiums, including Soldier Field and where you're going to be in a couple of weeks at Gillette in Foxborough. It is so much different than an arena experience, obviously, with the number of people and size and what you can do as well. When you get in and when you really get going in a concert and really get in, do you ever add songs? Do you ever add to it?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but because every night's different and every show's different.
So you just feel it. You say, "Okay, let's throw this in there." Or?
Yeah, and you get what's it as we call in the South. You start you start to feel the Holy Spirit up there.
Yeah.
You know, and you just don't want to stop, and it almost becomes this moment that it's this cell that keeps growing and growing and growing, and you don't want that night to end. So yeah, we'll just I've got this one button on stage where I can hit the button and nobody can hear me except the band. And I can say, okay, we're going to add this, or take away this, or isn't that girl in the third row really hot? Whatever. So it can be whatever. So a lot of nights I'll hit that button and go, okay, we're going to add this, add this, add this. And they're going, okay, we haven't rehearsed that in 6 months. Okay, but whatever.
Yeah.
And we just do it. But it happens all the time.
That fascinates me. Mike and Mike, we're presented by Progressive Insurance, our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And anyone who knows Kenny knows he's a great sports fan, so we'll definitely get to some sports. But this is of more interest to me. Remember, Golic got up. Golic got up and sang a song with Darius Rucker on stage that one time.
Yeah. How'd that go?
That was great. I sang Eagles, Take It Easy.
Oh, great.
Is what I did. I won a bet from him.
He won a bet from Darius.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the two things that impressed me the most about that, one were how well he sang. I mean, Golic is genuinely a good singer.
Quick side note, one of John Mason, who plays bass in the band, asked me before, he said, are you going to sing it in G? I said, what the hell is G? I said, just play it and I'll kind of sing, and if it sounds bad, play louder.
But that's the point, is that Darius, because I heard the whole story, that Darius and the band, they didn't practice. There was no rehearsal. They hadn't practiced that song. I mean, it's a well-known song, so I guess all of them kind of in their head know how to play it.
Yeah.
But they don't have, like when I was a kid and I played the trumpet, we had sheet music in front of us. I mean, you guys aren't doing that. So you guys are so good that if we just basically said to you, go up there and play a song that all of you know but you've never practiced in your life, you could basically do it, right? You could get from point A to point B.
Yes, and then we'd have some hills and valleys to get there, but yeah. I mean, if you said go and play a song, we especially if it's a song we've all heard in our heads over the years, we would kind of have the framework to get through it.
Not the way you want to do it.
The Eagles would be a band I'm just guessing you would have liked. Maybe
no doubt. Yeah.
So pick a famous Eagles song.
Well, like along that way, Darius said those guys, he actually when I was allowed to sing any song except his. He didn't want me to butcher his song. So I came up with that because I wanted to pick one that wouldn't go too high, too low, that I could maybe do because I love karaoke. Brandy's my.
I would love to hear. I would love to hear a rendition.
We'll get you that. Oh, absolutely. So I said that, and he said, that's wild you say that. That's a song we sang early on when we got, when we were doing covers from other bands, and it was, so they knew it and they had played it before.
I didn't realize that part of it. So that kind of ruins it for me, because I imagine they just stood there and they said,
no, they had
take
played
it easy,
it
and they just went into it.
You're right, it does happen. Like, there'll be several nights my guitar player Clayton is the biggest Van Halen fan, I think, on the planet. He just loved them.
Mm-hmm.
And so one night we were playing, and I said, let's do, I forgot what it was, Running with the Devil or whatever it was.
Right.
And he started playing it. And he had played it his whole life in his apartment, but we didn't know it. But we made it through.
All right, Mike, go ahead.
I want to make the correlation to what we just saw in first preseason games, not only for top picks but for undrafted free agents who all got their first look in the NFL. So we were talking a little bit last night how long you've been on the road, 25 years?
Yeah.
So even before you headlined, when you were just starting, that first time when you were going up on stage, I'm just trying to, where I'm going, trying to make the equivalent of that, you going from college to pro ball, and now you're in the big time. So take us back there to that point, and just like the nervousness and the thought process.
I was very nervous. I had no idea what I was doing.
How old were you?
I was... my road manager David's over here.
Yeah,
24, 25. So I'd played music in college, but it was just like this. It was on a stool by myself at a Mexican restaurant for tips. I was that guy playing my hero songs. So,
what did you play then?
What did I play?
Yeah, like when you were sitting in the Mexican restaurant in Tennessee someplace with a jar in front of you and people are dropping dollar bills in it. What songs were you playing?
Oh, I was playing the Eagles. I was playing Tom Petty. I was playing Jackson Brown. I was playing, some country. It was so many different things. And, my musical taste then mirrors my musical taste now. I truly believe that the music that you make as an adult, what comes out of you as an adult is a really good reflection of what you consumed as a kid.
Right.
And I'm no different, So I was, even then in college, I was playing so many things. I just loved it.
So then you get to the stage for the first time.
I get to the stage for the first time, and I'd never been. I never had a band because it was always just me on a stool. I never had a band till I went on the road. I had to get used to that. But the thing that was exciting, and I'm sure for a lot of these players that, the Patriots played last night, for those guys that, whether they make the team or not, they've got that uniform on, and they're out there on field, and that's got to be the most exciting feeling for them. And it was the same way for me going up on stage, because everything that you experience is brand new, at that level, and it was. Still, though, I get excited about it.
What a road, because, all the way to the superstar you are, to going to the concert last night. I always think that one of the most incredible things is when you're doing a song and you can just basically put the microphone out.
Oh, it's the best
and
feeling.
Everybody is just singing along. You don't have to sing along.
Well, it's you see you feel this recognition of other people's lives and the things they've gone through and how much they've lived with that music. It's one thing just to listen to a song on the radio, but for that music to mean so much and for them to live with it and to care enough to come and sit there and sing those songs back to you. When David and I were in college, I've told you I've got 4 or 5 guys on the road with me that I went to college with in high school, and if you asked us then. If we would have had that many people singing all these songs back to us that I wrote, we would probably have bet against it. We just wanted. I told David, I said, I wouldn't it be great if we could just get in a bus one time and just do one tour and play some of the places that our heroes played? Would that be great? And this is our 25th trip.
So then along those lines, you go from there to where you are now to when you do these stadium shows, you have God knows how many 18-wheelers taking your stuff anywhere. Yeah. God knows how many people who are kind of dependent on you as the star.
Yeah.
What a difference in feeling. You've become the beginning guy to like the CEO of this whole thing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, this was several years ago when it really hit me. We had been doing football stadiums a couple of years, and I woke up outside of Heinz Field in Pittsburgh, and I looked out the window of my bus, and I saw all these buses and all these trucks, and I don't usually see all that stuff, every day. And I'm going, wow, we got a lot of stuff out here. I'm going, who's paying for all this? And I went, oh, you are.
Exactly, yeah. You are the overseer.
I'm trying to write songs. I'm not thinking about how much gas goes in those things, So.
But to your previous point, and not to get like really melodramatic here, but like people live with your music not just in the good moments, but like, and that's the really important part. Like, my favorite song of his is the song "Don't Blink." I never listened to country music my entire life until that night at the White House. And then, again, I don't want to get too serious here, but like when my dad was really, really sick, I remember being in the hospital and going outside, and like I put that song on, I listened to that, and that was whatever it means, it means. But my point is, people live with your stuff at the most emotional points of their lives, and it comes to mean things to them that you might not even know. Like,
that's right.
That song means whatever it means to you, but to other people, it means whatever it means to them. So I don't even know that I'm trying to make a point here, but it matters more to people in some ways than you may even realize.
And that's the beauty of being a songwriter, because you could write something from a personal experience or whatever it is, a life experience, and you can write that song and record it, and you put it out, and just like you were talking, you never know how people are going to listen to it or what's going on in their life and what it's going to mean to them. And it could mean something completely different to them than you as the creator of that song who wrote it. And so that's the beauty of music, and I feel very blessed to be doing it. And it's just...
and then what it led to you being a sports guy. I mean, the doors that kind of open, and to all the sports people who now want to be around you and do what you do. As I've always said, I've told you this before, it was always like entertainers wanted to be athletes, and athletes, we all want to be on that stage singing like that.
The first sports guy I ever met was Rick Sutcliffe, and he was still playing. He was not playing for the Cubs. He was playing for the Cardinals, actually, which is ironic because they're such rivals. But he was playing. He was playing with the Cardinals. I think it was his last year, and I was doing a show at a club called Whiskey River in Chicago, and nobody knew who I was. I swear they thought I was the house band. Okay, but Rick Sutcliffe knew because he had knee surgery or something. He did something with his knee, and I had a song out that nobody heard called "Whatever It Takes," but he somehow heard it and used that song as inspiration for his rehab. And so I was there singing that song, and him and Mark Grace were at the show, and those two guys were the first pro athletes or athletes at all that I ever met that told me the same thing you just said. They said, God, Mark goes, I would give anything to be up there.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'd give anything to play second base for the Red Sox, too. It's like, so there is this mutual respect. And over the years, I think if you come to our shows, we have all the collages of these backdrops everywhere in our tour, and it's just a collage of pictures of people that we become close to over the years. And there are a lot of musicians on there, but there are a lot of sports people.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys are on there, several times. And I don't know, it's just been an interesting thing to watch happen, because I think that we have a lot of people in sports come to our shows because deep down they would love it, because it's a different feeling to be up there than on the field. And I think that the part of me that would really love to be on the field, they get that, and they would really love to be up where we are.
Oh, love
So
Kenny Chesney is here. We will definitely get to a little sports, but coming up next, because he has the guts to do it, I've got Brandy here ready to go.
Oh, I got to hear it.
Golic is going to sing his favorite song, his karaoke go-to.
I did it a few weeks ago at Jake's wedding.
Yeah. Not at the wedding itself.
No, the 2 nights before when it was a 3
Am I going to hear him? Are you just going to play him singing it, or am I going to hear him?
No, I'm going to sing
play
it.
the song, and he's going to sing.